The line at the bank was long, sluggish, and impatient. Everyone seemed to be in a rush, except him. He stood at the counter, calm, humble, and wearing a worn-out jacket that had clearly seen better days. The young bank manager behind the glass looked at him, barely hiding his irritation. "Next!" he barked, tapping his pen impatiently. The man approached the counter and quietly handed over his deposit slip. He wasn't asking for anything extravagant, just a small deposit into his account. But when the teller glanced at the balance, her eyes widened. "Sir, this amount barely covers your bills." He smiled softly. "I know, but if I have the balance, I'll pay double to help the next person in line." The manager snorted, leaning back in his chair. "Double, really? You think anyone does that? Sounds like a fairy tale. People like you are too generous for this world." The line behind them tensed with awkward laughter. Some shook their heads, thinking this was another day of bank comedy. But the man simply nodded and waited. There was no malice in his eyes, only kindness. A few minutes later, the bank terminal buzzed. The teller froze. Something wasn't right. She looked at the screen, then at him. The man didn't flinch. Slowly, a realization dawned on her, and then like lightning, it hit the manager. This can't be real," the manager whispered. The man chuckled softly and leaned forward. "I think it's real enough." The bank manager's face drained. He had mocked the man without knowing who he really was. The line of customers had gone silent, staring at the man with newfound respect. "Yes," the man continued, "I am the CEO of this bank. And today I wanted to see how my employees treat anyone, with kindness and humility." The manager stammered, I didn't know." "You mocked me because of what you thought I lacked," the man said gently. "But generosity doesn't come from money. It comes from the heart." The next moments were surreal. The manager, humbled and ashamed, realized that true human worth isn't in wealth, appearance, or status. It's in how we treat others. The man quietly completed his deposit, smiled at the teller, and walked out, leaving behind a line of people changed by a simple act of kindness. From that day on, the bank wasn't just a place for transactions. It became a place where respect, patience, and generosity mattered more than numbers on a screen. Because sometimes the smallest acts of humanity reveal the biggest truths. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the bank. Employees whispered among themselves, each replaying the moment the CEO had revealed his identity. Some felt embarrassed by their own reactions, while others felt inspired by the humility and generosity they had witnessed firsthand. The manager, who had mocked the man earlier, couldn't shake the memory. He sat at his desk long after closing, thinking about how quickly he had judged someone based on appearance. The next morning, he arrived at the bank an hour early, not to work, but to change. He started greeting every customer with a genuine smile, listening patiently, and treating each person as if they were the most important visitor in the world. Meanwhile, the man, still anonymous to most, continued his daily routine, visiting small local businesses, leaving generous tips, and quietly helping anyone in need. What he didn't know was that his simple act at the bank had set off a chain reaction. Customers who had witnessed the scene began performing small acts of kindness themselves, paying for the person behind them in line, offering help to strangers, and choosing patience over irritation. Weeks later, the manager received a letter from the CEO himself. It read simply, "Kindness is a currency that never depletes. Thank you for choosing to see the humanity in others today. Keep it alive, and the world will be richer for it." The manager folded the letter, tears welling in his eyes. He finally understood. The true measure of a person is not what they own, but how they make others feel. And in that quiet, ordinary bank, a small but powerful transformation had begun. It was a reminder that even the briefest encounter, the smallest act of compassion, can inspire ripples of change far beyond what anyone could imagine. From that day forward, the bank became more than a place for transactions. It became a place where kindness was noticed, celebrated, and passed on. And for the man who had quietly changed so many lives, there was no need for recognition. Sometimes the greatest impact comes from the simplest gestures, offered without expectation, but received with gratitude.